Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. I'm your host, Zack Hamilton, and I am really looking forward to today's conversation because I actually had to stop Sue and was like, all right, we got to record because the conversation was getting spicy, and I think it's everything that everyone needs to hear. So, Sue, welcome to the hot seat.
Well, thank you very much, Zach. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Sue, you and I have been talking. You've been in this industry for a while. You've been in industry. You've led marketing teams. You've led customer experience teams. You have consulted for incredible organizations. You've been a member of the CXPA for such a long time. So I can't wait to hear the topic that's making you cringe. But before we do that, set the scene for us. Where's this conversation taking place?
I live in a small village in Surrey, and I have a fantastic pub in my village. So we are there having a very lively conversation.
I love it. I love a really good conversation in a pub. What's your go-to? Do you have a favorite go-to?
Drink wise, I can't get my Negronis from the pub because interesting, as you can tell, I'm an American, US expat living in the UK, and it's been interesting learning about the pub setups that the breweries run the pubs and people can do a business plan to basically run the pub. So every time I ask my friend George, who runs um, our pub, for the ingredients for Negroni, he said, can't do it because we have to order from a certain list from the breweries. So I have to go into Guildford to get my Negroni.
Gosh, it's the next time I'm in the UK, which will be soon, if I get by you, I'm trying to think. I typically go to London, but if I
I
make
can
my
meet
way,
you in London.
I was gonna say I will bring you a Negroni. We could do that.
Sounds good to me.
I love this. So, Sue, everyone has at least one of those topics or a couple topics that it's just really making them cringe when it comes to the discipline of customer experience or conversations being had about customer experience. I'm really curious, what's that one topic making you cringe that you really just want to unfuck today?
Well, it's about building influence inside and outside of the C-suite.
Mm,
Um, I tend to see a lot of CX leaders thinking that when they get a seat at the table in the C-suite, it's like, wipe the hands, I'm here, I've made it. But nothing's guaranteed other than death and taxes, and I know plenty of people who get out of paying taxes, but anyhow. Um, a lot of most times it has to start outside the C-suite. You need to build influence there, and then you earn your way into the C-suite and the board.
yeah, I love this point, right? Because too often when I scroll LinkedIn, I see CX leaders complaining about they don't have a seat at the table. If only they had a seat at the table, the things that they could do in customer experience. You hear it all the time being pushed by the thought leaders on podcasts and webinars. Sue, I love that point that you just made about you have to earn your way to it, right? It's not given to you, you earn it. And you do it through influence. So, for all of those CX leaders that just sat up in their seat, help them understand one, how to influence both in the C suite and then your cross functional partners. And then two, why that's so important.
Well, first, I think we'll have to back up because I've had some people tell me that there's no such thing as internal customers, and I have to totally disagree with that. There absolutely is, and especially if you're a solo CX person building a CX team. A lot of times we're grassroots, and we need to start one at a time. How you do that, how you build influence is, and I like to flip the Stephen Covey seek first to understand. My take is seek first to understand so you can be understood. And that's all about looking at there's different types of people. Like you have the chief marketing officer, you have the chief financial officer, you have the chief operating officer. Those three have different agendas. So you need to understand who your internal customer is, what motivates them, what keeps them up at night, talking their language so that they're they see and all of this with curiosity and empathy so that they get that you're getting them. Then they'll start to listen to you. But it just doesn't start there. It doesn't end there. It starts there, but then there's building relationships within teams. So, and then working with those people that you've built relationships to collaborate across the organization, because that's going to get people rowing in the same direction. I have a 20-second story to illustrate this.
Go for it.
So I just built my fourth CX program from scratch.
Mm,
And one of the things that I did, we had these Monday, what we would call KSS, which is knowledge sharing sessions. Nobody knew anything about customer experience. I was the first person. So I went in to this knowledge sharing session, explained what customer experience is, give them some examples of what we can do to help them. And I kid you not, I had about an hour's worth of questions after we had the session. So it was a 2-hour session. Was it was amazing. People, when I was mentioning things, I was watching people who had their videos on, and it was like the light bulb was going on. That's why we do this. Oh, that really could help me. And even continuing the conversation afterwards. So then what I ended up doing, we put voice of the customer reports together. And it wasn't something to just share with leadership. We shared it across the organization. And I had people coming to me, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that happened. Goodness, I think I can help with that." And that's really giving me something to think about. So when I see people thinking about customer experience, not realizing it, but putting two and two together to actually getting it and wanting to help, then I know that I'm onto something. It's not a perfect world, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Sue, you're speaking to my soul right now. I mean, it's like, I'll back up just for a minute. When you think about influencing, I'll never forget my executive leadership coach when I was at Aaron's, Julie Zaide. She said, Zach, the hardest level of leadership is is influence. And the reason for that is you have to win through influence by, to your point, building relationships, putting them first. What KPIs are important to them? How do you uncover the friction that is blocking them from achieving their KPIs? Showing them that you're in it with them, not just trying to dictate to them, right? As CX leaders, we really don't have a P&L to manage outside of our kind of budget, right? Oftentimes, we have no prioritization kind of authority, right? That sits somewhere else within the organization, and we don't have to have it. Like, we can win through influence. To your point, everything that you just did, when the light bulbs started going off, I bet they were like, "You mean it's not just an MPS and a trend line? Like, you're actually showing me something here?" And I think that's the difference where you just built your fourth strategy from nothing.
It's tangible things. And I
Yeah.
was gonna say the fourth leg is storytelling. And by that, I mean not just looking at CX metrics and customer metrics, but operationalize. So my customer satisfaction score increase actually resulted in 5 new customers. Then you can tell stories based on that. The data's not the story, but the data helps you tell the story.
Yeah, it's such a great point. It's such a great point, right? And I think too often, before we kind of get into your player tips on how to just completely unfuck this, is CXers believe that customer verbatims or text analytics is the story. And it's only part, to your point, it's only part of the story. It's not the entire story, it's only part of the story. And in order to drive and win through influence, you have to connect the dots between customer and P&L.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think, and it's something that you and I have chatted before about, is sometimes I'm seeing customer experience teams, leaders, whoever, are romanticizing about customer experience. I'm in the customer experience seat now. I can do my personas, I can do my journey maps, I can do my voice of the customer and create metrics dashboards. That's great, but it can't be done in a vacuum. It always has to align with what the organizational goals are. And when you can do that, even that small piece even helps your influence because the executive leadership is thinking they get it. They get what we're trying to do here. They get our North Star. And for most organizations, the North Star is growth. They
Yeah.
get what we're trying to do, and they're they're actually helping us get to our North Star quicker. It's all about alignment. I don't know who it was, which scientist said this, but they said all matter is interconnected, which means everything is interconnected.
Well, I love that, which ultimately means if your experience isn't performing, then quite frankly, you're just managing insights and it's not experience because experience is action.
Absolutely.
So you've built now 4 programs from scratch. Obviously, that takes a lot of influence. So what is like the first player tip you have? Like it's your first go-to whenever, you get into a new organization, you've got to build a new strategy or program from scratch. Like what's that first thing that you just go to?
Well, for me, this last time, I was handed an org chart, which was a very outdated org chart, and I didn't know very many people. And as you know, customer experience um, touches just about every team, even HR, through employee experience. So what I did is I looked at that org chart. Of course, I started with the more logical things, like who was managing accounts, who had the who had the direct link with customers, like account management, customer support, some of our other engagement groups, and just sat with them, introduced myself. They didn't realize what customer experience was. That happens often, which you know. Um, and I was curious and wanted to know what in their team they didn't feel was working well and what could be improved. Because when you start asking them questions about those things and really come from it using your authentic self to understand, using empathy, curiosity, taking deeper dive questions, they open up. And that's where the trust starts.
Mhm.
And trust is always the foundation of influence.
I love that. I love that word that you used too, is just curiosity, right? And it's about curiosity of what's happening in your department. What challenges are you having? And I say this all the time, but CX leaders, you have to be able to lead discovery like a top 1% SaaS AE leads discovery, right? So think about how you got sold your platform. I'm sure they did a lot of great discovery. Well, you got to do that too. And just like you said, you just got to be curious. That's where the trust starts. What's your second go to? What's your second player tip?
My second tip is to share. share often. And by that I mean I use the example of the voice of the customer report. Too many times customer experience will do creative voice of the customer report. Here are the issues that we see, here are the wins that we see, here are recommendations, and go from there. But there are people at the front lines that need to see that because they may have some really good insights on, oh, I think we should do this versus this because it'll be easier. And when I look at continuous improvement, I'm looking at what is the greatest impact to the least amount of effort and go from there. I mean, some things you want, it's a big thing that, it's going to take some effort, but I tend to start there because a bunch of low-hanging fruit will really change a customer.
Absolutely. And I think part of this is not only will it change a customer, but stacking a lot of wins together, even if they're just singles, like if you're playing baseball, just small wins, that starts to build credibility and trust with your internal stakeholders and your executive leadership team, especially if you're not building a new program from scratch. You're actually coming in and now you have this strategy or program that's been in place for 5 years and there's been no value creation, right? So I love what you said about, and it's really understanding where your organization's at. Are they just trying to deliver small wins in the quarter? Or are they stretching for those triples and those home runs? And then the other piece that I really, really love about this is just that sharing, right? Especially with the front line, because ultimately, when we pull those levers, they're the ones that have to execute it. They know what can be executed and they know what works well.
And it's a good foundation for if your employee experience program might not be as sophisticated as others. I mean, the work that I've done, I've found that even involving employees in something so that they know and they don't have to hear about it when the mandate comes down. Oh, we're
Yeah.
we're doing 5 days a week in the office or something like that. But actually having a voice, because that isn't that why we're doing employee engagement surveys once or twice a year? For the voice and actually taking the voice and doing something with it?
Well, that's the thing. It's about actioning it, right? But I think you're so, but it's also right. If you think about change, all change management can be accelerated with involving your front line because now the resistance not up. Sue, what's your third go-to? What's your third player tip?
My third player tip would be to caught me on the spot a little bit here, but don't be afraid to stumble. And that's about making an error. You thought this hypothesis was correct, it was leading to something, but it all comes down to honesty, being authentic, and I wasn't right on this particular thing, but I've looked at the numbers, looked at what customers had said, and I think that this is a better approach and why.
Yeah, I love that, right? Because there's no one who is absolutely perfect. And I think too many times CXers fall down because we try to play that role because we so badly want that seat at the table. And I've actually found failing more often, but asking for help has actually accelerated the initiatives that I wanted the organization to prioritize.
Absolutely. We're all human, and when we show the vulnerable side, it's vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. I think
No.
vulnerability is a sign of strength, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Sue, this has been fantastic. I love just kind of the topic of that influence is earned, it's not given. And I love your three-player tips, especially from someone who's built four experience strategies from scratch. I mean, you that must be a record because most programs now are they've been there for 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, I have colleagues that have done more,
Mm,
but it's been a wonderful learning process, and there's been some missteps along the way,
yeah,
but you learn more when you have those
yeah,
missteps, I think.
absolutely. Well, Sue, next time it'll be in person in London with a Negroni.
Ah, sounds great.
Any of our listeners want to follow up with you and extend the conversation, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. Love chatting with people. Or they can go to my website, which is M.
Yeah, and for all of our listeners, when we drop the episode in the LinkedIn newsletter below, all of Sue's information you can find there as well. We will add the website so you can find it there. Sue, again, thank you so much for coming to the hot seat. Let's chat again soon.
Well, thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Yeah, cheers.